Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about defunding police. Our Democratic state legislature and our governor have been defunding the police through legislation for years. Stats are relevant to this discussion. I've worked in law enforcement for over 15 years. I have 0 sustained complaints of misconduct. Everybody's going to get a complaint in the business, but 0 sustained. I have 0 allegations of excessive use of force, and I've arrested, let's say, quite a few people. Washington State is the lowest state in the country, if you include District of Columbia, for officers per 1,000 citizens at 1.4. The lowest in the country. Yeah, that should shock you. Seattle and surrounding King County municipalities, here's some stats. 33% more shots fired incidents from 2020 to 2021. What happened in those periods? 39% more total shooting victims just this year than last year. Here's some more data. Statewide homicide data shows a 50% increase from 2019 to 2020, and 2021 is on pace to beat it. Here's some more data from your legislature about defunding police. House Bill 1054 addresses tactics with police. House Bill 1310 addresses permissible use of force for police. House Bill 1267 addresses independent investigations. Senate Bill 5066 addresses duty to intervene by police. And Senate Bill 5051 addresses decertification. All of these sponsored and passed by your beloved Democrats. All were hastily researched and poorly written. This has caused confusion and a lack of trust by law enforcement and their communities. And the news only gets better in 2022 because on that legislative session, the Democrats will be going after House Bill 1202, which is qualified immunity for law enforcement, and House Bill 1203, which is community oversight boards for law enforcement. These will only exponentially decrease your morale in law enforcement in your communities, and they're going to divert costs into unethical political events intended to attack and destroy your public safety. Here's another stat for you, 0%. That's the amount of justice that victims will get as a part of House Bill 1267, which is independent investigations. Just imagine a school shooting. Imagine the law enforcement shows up and shoots and wounds, uses lethal force on a suspect. The independent investigations team can show up, take jurisdiction, and law enforcement can no longer investigate the homicides because the independent investigative group does not have the authority to investigate the homicides. Those children will not receive justice. 100%, that's another stat. The amount of anxiety for law enforcement as a result of Senate Bill 5051 for decertification. It states the following, and I quote, "The commission may deny, suspend, or revoke certification or require remedial training of an applicant or officer if the applicant or officer, whether occurring on or off duty, has engaged in any conduct or pattern of conduct that fails to meet the ethical and professional standards required of a peace officer, disrupts, diminishes, or otherwise jeopardizes public trust or confidence in the law enforcement profession." Could that be construed as what I'm doing right now? We don't know. This is all undefined. And if you go on top, and you go on further into this, the review board for this, who suggests that I should be decertified, is weighted 13-8 by citizens to law enforcement representatives. And they can have a quorum with 9. And then if I want to take it to a review board, it's 3-2, weighted citizens to law enforcement. And it's live streamed so everybody can watch it. The argument by Democrats is that they have not limited when police can respond. Okay? But if you had a biased, subjective liability with a biased, subjective appeal process, which could result in prison, job loss, financial ruin, and exponential levels of stress, how would you react? Would you go? I'm over, but I'm almost done. Many of the Democratic politicians in Washington State have told Washington State residents, through their actions, that the suspects are now the victims. The police are your suspects, and the general public, all of you who are really being victimized, don't matter if the narrative doesn't fit their leftist agenda. When laws are made out of emotion rather than reason, this is an inevitable result. Despite these challenges, here's the good news. Good people still put on a uniform and attempt to provide the best possible service to the communities they serve. Accountability is necessary for our police, but this perversion of public safety is unacceptable. When law enforcement is performed according to sound values and reasonable standards, law enforcement is the most noble profession because it enables people to stand between good and evil. And guess what? Law enforcement will continue to act out of wisdom and not out of fear. Trust our profession. Don't trust the self-serving politicians. Amen.